Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
Hi everyone. Oh, we don't want to see those people yet. Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one, really. What's been happening? Well, I got another message from my state president, and to be honest, well, it could be in reaction to this this picture here, because it turns out that perhaps I wasn't the Messiah. I was indeed just a very naughty boy. And the outcome of my disciplinary council is that my membership has been removed. And speaking of memberships, just real quick, a couple of people have already joined in as channel members, which is lovely. So Les Brown and Cindy Webster, thank you very much. Yeah, so maybe it was that, or maybe they just wanted to excommunicate an adorable little 8-year-old. Maybe that's what I wanted to do. Because deep down inside, that's me there on the right. Anyway, I'm going to unmute everyone. Everyone say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
You know it's bad when I just start rambling straight away.
The only way is up.
Yes, the only way is up. Yeah, let's bring that off the screen for a moment and just everyone go onto the screen. So there's already 1,000 people watching, so people are clearly interested to hear what's happening. I suppose I'd better start with what happened on Thursday. So Ruth and Peter, you were there. Ruth, what was your impression of me coming out into the car on Thursday? Do you want to walk people through a little bit of the behind the scenes there before we talk a bit more about what happened at the council? I'm going to eat.
So my impression of you, what you seem to me to be feeling.
Yeah.
I think you should do an impression of Nemo, Ruth. I'd like to see that.
You just look shell-shocked. You honestly look shell-shocked. You look like you'd just been part of a car accident or something like that and were walking away from it, not quite sure what just happened to you. So yeah, it was hard to watch you going through it in the moment, I've got to say. And I think for Peter as well, it was just really, really hard to see you going through that. And I think that's part of the whole process, part of the brutality of the whole process, is that you can't have anyone there or very few people there in solidarity in the room with you to support you. And for us on the outside waiting and wondering what's going on in there, we have no idea what it is you're going through either. So yeah, it was really tough seeing you come out like that.
And you very kindly offered up your car for the live stream with John Delin.
You did.
Yeah. And I think that went very well, and there's a copy of that on this channel. So if you want to kind of catch the essence of what the night was like, feel free to jump over and check that video, because we're not going to relitigate that tonight particularly. A few details we could talk about tonight in terms of what happened in the room, etc. Now I'm a bit more with it and able to sort of talk to it a bit more. I already see people in the comments saying that they want to know what was in the private communications. Unlike my stake president, I'm not going to violate the sanctity or certainly the confidentiality of the private communications that I had with another individual. That individual can collect their 30 pieces of silver from my studio directly, should they want them, for handing over their communications. Yes, Ruth, sorry.
Somebody's just said that I'm lying in the comments and that I'm not telling the truth. I take issue with that.
Okay.
They're saying that you could have had whoever you asked for in the meeting. Can we just clarify who you asked for and who you were denied having?
Yes, sure. So I asked for my wife to be in there with me. I asked for my eldest quorum president to accompany me for support. And I asked for a witness to be there and speak on my behalf, as well as my wife spoke on my behalf, and they were all granted. The people that weren't allowed to be there were the High Council. The High Council, despite what DNC, I believe it's 102, says, DNC 102 says the High Council should be there. They weren't. They weren't allowed to be. I asked my state president. I know it's not standard anymore, but if you request it, the state president has the option to allow them to be there to make sure it's a fair hearing, and they weren't there. And yeah.
So to be specific, my state president respected my request for that, and even though it was COVID, we ended up waiting a month or so till we could actually get that many people in the room. He fully understood that both in the Doctrine and Covenants, that's absolutely guaranteed as far as your entitlement in a trial of this kind, and also in the handbook itself. It has slightly foggy language where it says that you may have the High Council if the person requests it. I interpret that in the English way, which means yes, you can, you may have it. If the person requests it, then that should be automatic.
Yeah.
But he claims to have reached a different conclusion reading that. But the handbook itself, I think, still talks about how the format should be that you have 6 councillors, high councillors, who are there to ensure that the case against you is made fairly, and 6 to make sure that the case for you is made fairly. And part of the procedure at mine was that the state president asked these people, do they, as far as the conduct of the hearing or trial or whatever you want to call it goes, that those standards were met. And that was a very important part of that. It's a safeguard. It is about ensuring at least a semblance of a fair process. So when you take that High Council away, all you've got is the state presidency, who is judge, jury, and checker of, because the High Council don't make the final decision, but they're absolutely there to say, actually, hang on a minute, this wasn't handled fairly. So by removing them, you're removing accountability, you're removing that check and balance on a fair process. And I just think, for me, obviously we'll get into discussion about it all, that alone is enough to have a fair basis for an appeal, that most basic protection of the person was not respected. It shouldn't be up to the whim of the state president whether or not that is followed for such a procedure. And that's just one of several flaws in how the whole thing was handled. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I would agree. It was definitely a big flaw. But yeah, they weren't there, and I kind of called that out at the time in the meeting. So if people want to know broadly what happened in the meeting, I turned up, went in, heard them lay out the charges against me. They had to amend the contract for the clerk to be able to take notes, and then they
tell us the details of that. Nemo, tell the details of that if you don't mind. What do you mean by that? What are you talking about?
Well, so they realized that the standard confidentiality agreement that everyone would have to sign would preclude the state clerk from taking notes. So instead, they decided that rather than preclude him from taking notes, they would simply amend a version of the contract to allow him to take his notes. The problem is, I was signing the version that doesn't allow me or instructs me not to permit anyone to make any notes. So that was in contradiction to his version of the contract. So they had to then amend mine to make it all work so that the clerk could take his notes. So already I went in feeling pretty sort of strong that I was, holding the process to account as best I could.
Because otherwise you'd have had to wrestle the biro out of his hand, wouldn't you? And
I would have, over the table.
Not permit him to actually jot down the proceedings.
Just over the table and slap it out of his hand.
Is that because the wording is that you can't allow, not only do you commit that you're not making a recording, but you can't allow other people to?
Yes.
I.e., point a listening device through the window or something. But
yes.
But the clerk gets to sit there writing all the notes. Okay.
Just got a nice message from John West. Some super chats coming in. Thank you very much, John. If anyone says nice things about me in super chat, I'm probably not going to read it out loud. But thank you, Rick Render, as well. And thank you very much, Thomas Moore. So the council went on, and I was blindsided with some private communications, but everything else was much of a muchness, really. Sorry, I'm not feeling too coherent at the moment, so you guys are going to have to drag me along into something resembling.
Right, I'm going to drag you through. Right, I'm going to ask if you don't mind intervening, because I have been in this situation. So when I went, because they had the whole 12, it was held in the chapel. So they had this big U-shaped sort of set up with tables and everyone all around the side. So you walk in, they're all very friendly, giving you handshakes and being, Mormon loving. But obviously with far fewer people there, which room were you in the chapel, Nemo?
We were in the
Set the
stake
scene.
president's office.
Wow.
Yeah.
So very cozy.
And were you kind of
Very
sat at one
intimate.
end at far ends of the
Well, no,
giant
I
high
was kind of
council
sat by.
table,
I
or
was
was
sat.
it more
No. We were in the stake president's office, so I was sat by the door. My wife was sat
Okay.
there. Other side of the stake president's
Yeah.
desk was the clerk. Then it was,
Hmm.
then it was the stake presidency along the wall there, and then tucked into the corner, the other side of the door was my elders quorum president.
That's a tight room to hold that many people.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Gosh.
Yeah. I don't know why we didn't do it in the larger High Council room, which we were at the
That's-
stake centre. If I'd known we weren't going to be using the High Council room, I would have just asked them to do it at Oxford because it would have been more convenient for me. But there we are.
So you sit down, and what's the first step? Is it the stake president has 15 minutes to kind of read the charges at you?
Yeah, I just want to answer this a sec. So I'll say a bit more about the private communications. What I will say, because again, I don't want to say who they were between or anything like that. I want to respect the confidentiality of it. What I will say is the conversations were discussing problematic church behaviors and issues with the church, but they were not in any way an incitement for anyone to leave the church, to reduce their faith, to weaken their activity. There was nothing between me and this individual that would encourage them to leave the church or should weaken their faith in any way. So yeah, that's all I can say about that really, until I've had a chance to talk to individuals involved. Mormon Stories Podcast is watching. Thank you very much for the support, John. Thank you. Yes, okay. So they laid out the facts against me, and it essentially went. I don't want to get into too much of it because I don't want to do a blow by blow right now because people want to hear what the letter kicking me out said. But essentially, they laid it out that some of the stuff online could be a problem because I've actually got a copy of the notes that were taken in the room. Oh, Julian, gone.
Sorry, just wanted to ask.
Julian wants a blow-by-blow account.
No, I don't need a blow-by-blow account. Just, I'm assuming they opened with prayer.
Yes.
Who and how did that play out? Who offered the prayer? Was it opened up to you or what was the?
No, I wasn't asked to pray. Funnily enough.
Yeah. So who did open with prayer?
I'm trying to recall. Hang on. I would have written it down.
Is it one of the councillors?
Let me double check. Because that's I mean, all the details matter at this point, right? So let's get it spot on. The person that opened with prayer was member of the state presidency, second councillor on the state presidency.
Yeah. And was there? Can you recall? I know I'm asking a bit much now, but was there anything in the prayer that kind of? I'm guessing that there would be something in there to kind of ask for help in, guiding the course of the meeting and any decision. I'm assuming, I would hope that there was an invocation of the spirit to guide it so that it could have the right outcome.
Sure, but also what I remember actually really sticking out to me was the way in which the prayer did not directly address any of what we were actually doing in that room. It was all euphemisms about that would be strengthened as we discuss the things that we need to discuss. And it's like, come on, they didn't want to speak to what was going on in the room, which, I kind of understand. Also, yes, Wendy Baker makes a really good point, and I raised this in my council. The handbook says public activity is what's concerned. Yes, indeed. And private emails shouldn't have been taken into account. Absolutely. And as we get into the letter, we'll see that in many ways, the first charge against me, clear and deliberate public opposition to the church, they don't really go after me for. They don't establish charge A because they know that everything they brought up to me pretty much was private. they said some generalist thing about my YouTube channel, but not really. Their major focus was the private communications and then emails that I sent to the High Council, which I sent to them in their capacity as the High Council and other stake leaders. And they were all like, oh, think of the stake leaders, think of their weakened faith by what you sent. But they never provided any evidence that anyone's faith was weakened. They never provided any evidence of the impact that it had on people. Yes, go on, Julian.
Sorry, I love that. Oh, it would have been so good. And of course, this is all deliberate, isn't it? They know exactly what's going on. They know what they're doing. They didn't give you any information beforehand. They wanted to give you something out of left field so that you wouldn't be able to prepare properly. But I just love the idea of you being there with the High Council and them putting forward that argument, and you say, well, can I just check whose faith has been affected by this? And then it'll be like, not mine, not my faith's good,
Yeah. I'd be like, right, so who is it then? Who is it? Who amongst you?
Not me. It's not me. I'm really faithful.
Yes. Yeah. And I agree. I think they would have been very reluctant to, actually profess that their faith had been weakened. Anyway, so I offered my 8,500 word rebuttal to them, and I gave them each a copy of it in a ring binder so that they could read along. And I walked them through the appendices, and I walked them through all the arguments, and I pointed out to them time and time again, you have no evidence. You've provided no evidence. And the charges say that these things must be established. So if you can't establish it with evidence, you can't find me guilty. Of course, they've gone, well, we clearly can because we say we can. And that brings us to the letter.
I think Nima, you've just exposed the real reason why they exed you. How many pages did you say?
It was maybe 20 pages of my argument, so 8,500 words.
They couldn't bear to read any more of your stuff.
Well, I read it to them in about 45 minutes ish.
Can I just ask, as they ex-Relief Society president, did you scrapbook it? Because maybe that's where you missed out on the extra you'd have got it over the line if you'd scrapbooked it.
Yeah, extra credit.
Was there a nice sculpture?
Sorry.
Yeah. That's right.
So Nemo, sorry, yeah. Nemo,
no.
I appreciate
if the question is, can we go back through it? No. We're moving
on.
What
were the charges, though? What were the charges, though? Just so we understand the response letter.
Yeah. Okay. So the charges were
specific. Yeah.
This council will consider your public statements as well as reported conduct that together suggest you have A, repeatedly acted in clear and deliberate public opposition to the church, its doctrine, and its leaders, and B, engaged in a pattern of intentionally working to weaken the faith and activity of church members. Okay. So they chose, we'll see in the response letter, they chose to go with B. They tried to say that something that I've done or haven't done or whatever shows a pattern of intentionally working with to weaken the faith of church members, but they have failed in any way to determine my intent. They have no evidence that I ever intended to lead anyone astray, ever. And there's nothing to that effect within my YouTube channel. And I provided them. So, Julian, if you thought my 8,500 word defense was bad, there was 100 pages in there of transcript of the past 3 or 4 months of my content, which is within the relevant period, because anything before that, my stake president had already provided me reassurances I wasn't in apostasy. So from the 2nd of July onwards, all of that content was provided to them as a transcript, and nowhere in there do I encourage people to leave the church or reduce their activity in the church. I actually encourage people to engage with the church and its systems. If you want to vote opposed, get involved, have your voice, have your say. That doesn't weaken the activity of church members or their faith. The things that they've discovered have already weakened that faith. So anyway, that was a lot of my argument. Now, a lot of you've been complaining, right? Loads of you've been complaining. I put these things up on the screen, nice, lovely, in one piece, and it's too small for you all to read. So don't you worry. I've made it a little bigger. So I'll read the letter out, and we'll stop. We will just stop as we go through it. And say witty, glib comments and other things that we think. Right. So first thing I would note is that I was officially excommunicated on the 30th of September 2024, which means I get to stand on the shoulders of some giants that were also excommunicated for speaking out and telling the truth in September of 1992, or was it 93? I always forget which one. But the September 6th. Anyway. So it says, Dear Brother Stilgo, thank you for participating in the Membership Council on the 26th of September 2024. We are mindful of the physical, emotional, and spiritual engagement that this process requires. That should read toll it takes. And are grateful to you and all those you invited to participate, both in person and in writing. So that means they're grateful to Jim Bennett for writing a letter. They're grateful to other people that wrote letters on my behalf. They're grateful for that. We've taken special care to review and consider all of the materials you delivered. Personal insights in the emails you shared, because again, I got 1,000 emails from people of support. A lot of people saying, Nemo's work brought me back to the church, or Nemo didn't cause me to leave the church, etc. So they're saying that personal insights in those emails that I shared highlight again to me the importance of building within our community a culture of authenticity and open, honest communication. This is something we've discussed many times over the years, and I would say in principle something on which we are largely aligned. Your ward sets a great model for this, and I believe we've made some good progress in building such a culture within our stake over the years. So bear that in mind. He's saying it's really important to have authentic, open, honest communication. And now he's about to kick me out of the church for authentically, openly, and honestly communicating with my stake leadership about issues within the stake. Great. So I don't know what model he's seeing as having been that culture growing in the stake, but it's certainly not one that actually means authentic, open, and honest communication. It means communication that doesn't offend the sensibilities of those not ready to hear about problems within the stake of second-class membership, etc. So he says, having carefully and prayerfully considered the information shared with the Membership Council in response to conduct contrary to the laws and order of the Church, the decision of the Council is to withdraw your church membership for a time. Immediately, I take issue with for a time. How long? 2 weeks? A month? 6 months? A year?
I mean, it's one of the things, a bit of data that came up in some of the discussions around where President Oakes has issued this sort of training to bishops and stake presidents to up the number and percentage of convictions within church discipline. Was that, well, why did they back off it? Why are we back to President Kimball era when there was actually a very concerted effort to stop excommunicating people into the 90s and onwards? And that was something that was constantly taught and trained. And I think someone said something like only 2% of people who've been exed ever come back. Now, that sounds about right from what I've observed. And I was listening to Inside Out podcast, and they were talking there about how in their experience it had always been this lovely warm fuzzy feeling and experience and everything was good and people repented and came back. And I was like, that is really not what I've observed around here, because people who get ex for, whether it is for sexual sins or apostasy or whatever, none of them are coming back. And certainly not into, some might still attend church, but they're not doing the process to kind of have their membership restored. So this idea of, oh, you're coming back, this is the way they frame it to make it more comfortable for themselves is we're doing these people a favor. It's a lovely, beautiful spiritual experience. We counseled with these sinners and we help them turn their life around. And I really notice that there is a kind of a fetishization of this process that can really get into the brains of bishoprics and stake presidencies. Because I've talked to many over the years, and I've been in a couple of church discipline councils, or at least maybe one or two, fortunately not many, as a ward clerk. And you just see this kind of, they don't realize what they're doing. They don't feel it. They don't understand it's a violent act. They think they're helping these people. It's like the bishops who constantly interrogate young people about their sexual sins and their masturbation and stuff. They think they're helping them. They really do. But what they're doing is, and they think they've cured them. They think, I counseled with this young person and he got fixed and it was all wonderful and everything's fine. It's like, no, that kid just learned to start lying to you, because he found he wasn't ever going to stop being a human being with genitals. And I think
where are you
there's
going
this
with this, Peter?
collective delusion. Well, the point is that they think you're coming back and it makes them feel okay about what they're doing.
See, I think you're
they
being
think
really
it's for a
generous
short
there.
time.
Would you let Ruth jump in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're being really generous, because the way I see it is they want to push you away, but at the same time keep you stood on the doorstep knocking on the door. It's like they've slammed it in your face, but they don't want you to turn away and walk away. So they're going to say, we might open it in a bit. We might, stand out there in the cold, and we'll talk to you through the crack in the door, whatever. But it's still that control. And actually, and I know that perhaps you're not in this same place, but actually, when you just go, you don't control me anymore. You don't have any say about what I do with myself, what I wear, how I think, what I consider to be moral and ethical, and all of these different choices that we make as adults. You don't have any say in that anymore. And that's really powerful and empowering to have that ability to walk away in your own integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really is all about the control. As Richard Jones said, it's all about the control. Even at this point, they're controlling your relationship post, getting rid of your membership. And I think that's really, really unfair. But
But part of my point is it's also about them being controlled by the system, that they don't feel like they're slamming the door in your face. I don't think these people genuinely believe they've just condemned you to the celestial king and out of darkness. If they really did, they wouldn't do it. You couldn't live with yourself doing that for a reason like this. If you're a child killer, maybe, but
right. But even
so
then,
they're deluding themselves. It's self-soothing.
Cool, got it, Peter. Got it. Jane, can you jump in?
And that's not the terminology that church members engage with anyway. The focus is on forgiveness and repentance, and this is a process that, whether we like it or not, people think that this is going to help. They would not be able to do this if they didn't go through some kind of mental process if they genuinely thought they were going to do this to inflict harm, then that's not what's happening here. There are a couple of really, really good things in this letter. There were a few really good things that had happened on the night of your church disciplinary council. There was a lot of kindness that was being shown at times, and none of those good things makes any of this okay. Wrapping it up in a parcel of niceness does not make this okay. You mentioned at the beginning of the letter where they could just say, we know the toll it takes. You know what? Well done, State President, for pointing out that actually breaking that down, it does take a physical toll on you. It does take an emotional toll. And it talks about spiritual engagement. It falls short of talking about this as a spiritual violation. It does, though, acknowledge the seriousness of the impact that this is going to have on you and other people involved. And I do feel appreciation for that. What it then, though, is going to do is to hold out this vision of, but we can let you come back. We can let you come back, and you get to hold on to that, and we're all just going to pretend that these problems don't exist. You're going to become someone else's problem for them to work with you. And what exactly will that look like? You see, they didn't give you a path for this not to happen. No. So am I really supposed to expect there's going to be a path for you to fix it? Because if it wasn't, if they didn't help you not get this far, then how in the hell can we trust that someone can help you get back to church membership?
That's what I said to my stake president, right? Was if you can't steer me clear of this, then how are you going to steer me back into membership in the church? He was providing me with reassurances that my behavior did not constitute apostasy. So put into context, right? The emails to the High Council stopped 6 months ago. 3 months ago, he gave me reassurances that all was fine. I wasn't heading towards church discipline. Immediately after, one of my big bursts of communication with both him and the High Council, right? Because he was always CC'd into them as well. He was always part of the conversation. They were just ancillary to it because I thought they needed to know. he came back and he reassured me that, having heard my explanation of my reason for my communications with the High Council, that he wasn't bothered. He was initially concerned, but he wasn't bothered anymore. Right? So he's provided me reassurances time and time again that wasn't a problem. And now he comes to this line: this decision is not taken because you voice concerns about the action of the church or disagree with its leaders. We spent several years counseling together regarding those concerns and disagreements. This decision has been taken as a result of your persistent efforts to persuade others to your point of view in opposition to the church and its leaders. So it's not actions of the church or disagree with its leaders, but it is because I voiced concerns about and made efforts to persuade others about my point of view in opposition to the church and its leaders. So it's not because I talked about the church and its leaders, because I talked about the church and its leaders.
Makes no sense at all.
Absolutely no sense.
I would like to ask viewers, I mean, because you present information, you fact check, that's what you're known for. You make it really concise, in and out, and you provide some information. When you're doing something about long form like this, I would love to know, when has anyone saw you trying to make a persuasive argument against the church? You know, you'll provide some information, but when have we ever seen you trying to change someone's point of view?
I mean, it's not my fault that if I share the facts about the church and I share the information as it affects me or as it affects everyone, that is persuasive in convincing people that there is a problem. It's almost like exposing people to the truth tends to convince them of things. Like, I don't understand how that's my fault, Julian.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Before I go on to this, I've got to say I haven't been on one of these things for a while yet. One of these Brit Vengers things, and I've got to say I think the behaviour has got quite bad while I've been away. There's lots of shouting out and talking over people. I've had my hand up several times, so please, you know, we're British. We do things in order.
Yeah.
Behave yourselves, folks. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's the school teacher coming out right there.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So the thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. None of the arguments or anything matters really. And this goes back to, I've got a slightly different take on what you're saying about the time thing, that it being, you know, for a time. Okay, that line is a remnant. It's something left over from what excommunication used to be. You know, all of this stuff about repentance, as Peter said, you know, excommunications were usually reserved for people that had committed serious sins, usually sexual sins, infidelity, things like that. And it was the idea of, right, you've done something really bad now, we've got to put quite severe punishment in place, but you can repent and there is a way back. You know, you've got to sit in the pew, but we're going to help you get back. Okay. Look at who's being excommunicated now. It's your Nemos, your John Delins, your Bill Reels. It's not the same thing anymore. Okay, it's a mock excommunication. It is a pretense. All of this is just about it's a PR exercise. It's a PR exercise dressed up as an ecclesiastical proceeding, where we can say, right, we're going to delegitimize you. We're gonna say, you know, we're gonna basically give a little bit of ammunition to the bishops and the stake presidents that might find themselves in these uncomfortable situations when people come to them with problems and say, oh well, I've heard this thing from this guy on YouTube, and they say, oh well, yeah, but he's not a member of the church. He's anti-Mormon. Oh no, he's not. He's a member. Oh no, he's an excommunicated member. He's just being bitter. Do you know what I mean? It's just not that I think it's effective. I think it's really daft, because I don't think it will really have any impact.
Yeah.
That's all this is. It's just a way of saying, right, okay, we've had enough now of what you've been saying, and so you can't be in our club anymore. Yeah. And so it's a PR proceeding, and so everything else is just nonsense. You can't excommunicate you for someone for pointing out the truth.
No.
You know, it doesn't matter who you're saying it to, doesn't matter how persuasive it is, it's missing the real point. You are telling the truth. You're saying your church leaders are lying to you, and you're pointing that out. Nothing else matters. Everything else is irrelevant.
Well,
Thanks.
there's something else
Jane,
that's irrelevant,
Sorry.
and that.
I just need to throw a super chat on screen real quick. Someone's just said, "Does this result have any impact on your plans for general conference and unusual coverage?" No, and we'll get to that later. Please, Jane.
Yeah. So the other thing that's irrelevant in this is the loads of information that you have presented to the contrary during your evidence about weakening faith. So it's although it's saying that this is what you're doing, we've decided that you're weakening the faith of people. The number of people who have reached out in chat and comments across and whether those were sent to your stake president, you provided a great selection of them.
I gave him all of them.
Reading material, right?
Yeah.
How many was that?
1,145.
Right. The number of comments that you receive, if you were to sort of add that number in, so the overwhelming evidence to show that this is not, that you haven't been able to demonstrate that this is a pattern of behavior. Because I'm going to say something nice about Nemo, right? This is, and guys, I know this is so cheesy, but because I couldn't make the excommunication trial event of the century, and I wanted to be there to support my mate. I had stayed home, and in the chat I was hanging out with all of the great people here, and that was the community. That was where it was at. I stayed home with my little Nemo. I stayed home with little Nemo here. This is my little Nemo puppet.
I did not consent to the production.
Right. Now you feel violated.
I have been making song recordings and everything. We have been making content in the Brit Avengers chat, and Nemo has been so focused on his defense that he hasn't even got to. Nemo, what's in store for you from Lil Nemo? You're gonna love it. Anyway,
ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to apologize for whatever this has become.
You promised
Jane,
some laughter. Anyway, because you find this stuff really awkward and being a bit silly here. We, as Brit Avengers, we've got Peter, who was excommunicated, who was still goes to church, and it was only a few months ago I resigned my membership. Sarah is still working really hard in her calling. And what you have done is to do nothing but support our membership in this church, as well as many, many others. Never once have you said, Peter, what are you doing? Do you think you should call it a day? You haven't encouraged anyone to take any action that's going to be traumatic. In fact, quite the opposite. You've had meaningful discussions about what the impact would be on that individual should they decide to take that step. And those conversations have always been instigated by the person who wants to go there in a conversation. You have not done this. And I am so offended that 3 people in a room could say anything different.
I mean, I have also threatened to forcefully rebaptize Peter, so I'm actually very invested in his returning in activity to the church. Someone's just raised a really good point in the question, and I'll come to you, Ruth. They're saying, can you explain to the public how this impacts your sealing? It's important for people to hear there is so much more involved. Yes, it's true. So in the LDS faith, when you're married in the temple, you're married for eternity. When you're married in a normal chapel, you're married for this life. And the LDS Church has just cancelled my eternal marriage with this piece of paper. So they're separating me from my wife forever. So she's very happy about this new turn of events, but I'm not too thrilled about it. So thanks for bringing that up. Julian, then Ruth, because Julian seems to want to respond directly to that.
Yeah, no, I would love to have been able to be there and say to them, do you believe that? You're gonna cast a verdict here on that having, if you believe all this stuff, that this has such massive implications for me and for my family. Do you really? I would love to have just heard those words from the stake president, the stake presidency's mouths, where they say, yes, I believe that we have now, cancelled your eternal marriage. I would love, because I don't think they do really. And again, like I say, I think it's a bit of a sham. But you've if you're going to do something like that, you've got to accept that. You've got to say, yeah, that is what I'm doing to you.
And I think what was really interesting for me was I kind of did something similar. I didn't get them to admit it, but I did sit there and say, you better be really sure, because the eternal consequences of this are severe, you know. I think I want to, Ruth, and then I want to get to reading more of this letter, because there's a whole nother side yet.
So there's both the sealing to your wife, but there's also the sealing to your parents. And I know for your mum particularly, that must have hurt really bad. I'm being, you know, maybe overly dramatic, but if somebody said that I couldn't be with one of my children forever, if that was part of my belief system, and these three men in a room on a wet Thursday evening said, this one of your children you won't get to be with forever, I would want vengeance. I would want blood. There would be death. You know, I would hunt them down. No, because that is, and I think it was so sweet when you showed that picture of yourself as a little kid, because to your parents, that's who you always will be. You're their little kid, and it's so symbolic that you were dressed in white as you are at baptism, and they brought you through those different processes and the different ordinances in the church, and here they are witnessing the ordinance of excommunication, in effect, when those ties are severed. For a believing person, that's devastating. Or you know, I would imagine that is devastating for them. So what I wanted to say was, everyone in the chat really wants you to just crack on and read the letter. So we'll stop interrupting you.
But my brother has made threats against me if I don't read this out. So he said, if you don't read this out, I'll excommunicate you as my brother. If the leaders can't handle truth, they shouldn't be leaders. This shows how callings are handed out for fun, not aptitude. And it's kind of true. If you're in a stake leadership position, you are in a position where you need to be able to handle concerns of members when they're raised to you. You know, they said to me in the trial that, you access the contact details of these individuals from resort, and the way they said this cracks me up still, from resources intended for members, as though I'm not one, as though I'm not intended to use member tools to contact members of the state presidency. I had to clarify. I said, do you mean like member tools? And he said, yes. So, right.
They are
almost
tools.
Almost as though I'm not allowed to use the very software that's designed to allow me to contact people. Bizarre. Anyway, so they basically said this decision has not been taken because you voiced concerns about the actions of the church or disagree with its leaders. The decision has been taken as a result of your persistent efforts to persuade others to your point of view in opposition to the church and its leaders. And the way in which I would persuade others to my point of view is to voice my concerns about the actions of church leaders and my disagreements with their behavior. Anyway, he said it is simply not possible to remain a member of the church in good standing while actively seeking to lead others away from it. Now, that is the part I take deep offense to, because that has never been my goal. I am apathetic at best as to whether you remain in this church, whether you leave, because my little segment of the conversation, John has his, Mormonism with the Mirth has his, Inside Out has theirs. All these people have their little segments of this conversation, right? Peter used to call it the bloggernacle because he's old, but nowadays we call it, you know, it's this space in which we exist, right? You got the apologists on their side. You've got people.
See, you haven't got a snappy name. You can't do better than bloggernacle.
I can't.
Well,
we
then stop complaining about it.
But we have this group, and I'm a little part of it. I'm a little part of the conversation. My thing is quick fact checking of church statements. It is checking the honesty of church leaders. It is calling these things. It's engaging with church systems. That's my little bit of all this. No part of it has ever been to take a stance on whether people stay or leave. It is simply to present the information and let people do what they want with it. So I absolutely disagree with his characterization that I've actively sought to lead others away from the church. And he has not been able to prove that I've actively done so, nor, as in the next line, when he says, it is this behavior. So my actively seeking to do something that I haven't actively sought to do, and he has no proof of that. He says, without consideration of personal circumstances or vulnerabilities, demonstrates a clear pattern of intentionally working to weaken the faith and activity of other church members. Prove that that was my intention. They have no proof that that was my intention. I gave them 100 pages of transcripts in which they will find no declaration of that intention. And I told them this in the meeting. If you cannot find in my content me saying anything that would make clear that I have an intention to weaken the faith and activity of church members, then you cannot find me guilty on that charge, because you cannot establish the intent. Because they said to me about Dan and Nate Jokes, oh, sorry, we can't speak to his intent. We'd have to go and ask him. Well, they've summoned me to a council. They've asked me, and then they've ignored what I've said. And unlike Dan and Nate Jokes, I actually spoke to my own intent and said it wasn't my intent to lead people out of the church or to weaken faith or activity. That's actually what really upsets me about this, is how 18 months I spent trying to get to the bottom of whether Dan and Nate Jokes and other church leaders were lying. We finally got to the point to ask him, and he went, oh, here's a public study that says I didn't lie. And so that's why I presented all the emails
he
that
was
I
lying,
got as
he
a
was
public
lying.
study. Because apparently a public study is good enough. So anyway, he then says, I invite you to modify your communications such that there is no longer risk. They no longer risk harm to individuals on their journey of faith. In particular, please cease from communications outside of social media, which directly and without invitation challenge the faith of the vulnerable in their personal places of worship. So don't talk to people at church, basically.
Let me just jump in, and I'm
Yep.
so sorry, guys. I know you want to go through this later, and
That's
yes.
fine. We can have a bit of chat now. Go on. Yeah.
This is unacceptable language. This is an unacceptable statement to make, as well as the previous sentence. You're now going to talk about vulnerable people. You're now going to talk about Nemo's interactions with people who are vulnerable. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because I suspect what you're talking about is people who are
people that can't handle the truth, Jane. That's
right.
what it means.
To be as kind as we possibly can. People who hear statements about the church and it rocks them and they don't know what to do with that, and they go and seek counsel from church leaders thinking it's going to help. I heard this on Nemo the Mormon's channel. Every stake president in the country is probably having the same conversation, because it's hard stuff. Nemo's not making a guarantee that you're going to come through this, with flying colours and it's all going to be okay. He's not here to make it okay. He's here to talk about some clear issues factually, and then if you decide that you're going to still engage with the church, your faith is so much more robust because you dealt with it, you tackled it head on, and there's the only person who's providing resources to be able to do that are people like Nemo. That's why people are flocking here to talk about the vulnerable after Nemo the Mormon has been assisting the work of supporting actual vulnerable people at risk of abuse, people who have survived abuse, the elderly, people who are concerned about how their tithing money is being used, vulnerabilities, whether it is in the church organization or whether it is individuals who are particularly at risk of that. Nemo's the person who's doing that work. And just because you don't like the tone of the conversation, you do not get to accuse him of exploiting vulnerable people. That is cruel and sick.
Can I speak to a comment that's just come in the chat here, because I do want to, I do engage with those who criticize me, and that's fine. Bambi 1830 says, "You're all acting like this came out of left field is just as deceitful as the church. The Exmos just created their own religion with the same problems." I'm not acting like this came out of left field. The thing that upsets me about this is the way in which they try to say that it's not what I'm saying publicly, but it's what I'm saying publicly. It's the way that they try and act as though they're not telling me off for doing something when really they are. It's the duplicitous and double-speak nature of this letter that I'm upset about. I knew that this day would come. I was very prepared for it in many ways. Still hurts, still gets me emotional, still hits me in the stomach. But, this is not unexpected. But I did think the church was learning its lesson, perhaps. Or I did think maybe, some of my hubris, like Icarus, I flew too close to the sun. And I thought, oh, maybe I will get away with it. Maybe, maybe they've learned. Maybe they won't excommunicate me. But no, not acting like it came out of left field at all. Not trying to act like this wasn't a possibility. Julian?
Yeah, I think, if anything, in our discussions, we were surprised that it didn't happen sooner, really, and that's not what this conversation is about at all. This is just one more piece of evidence that there are problems, that there's something rotten in Denmark. That's what we're doing. We're highlighting the fact that this is what's going on here is wrong. I don't think anyone's surprised by it, because this is what we've come to expect.
Yeah.
That your whole channel is based on the fact that they keep doing stuff like this, so no one's surprised.
Yeah.
But then there was never any complaints about. Someone's just said this is about people at church. There was never any complaints about my behaviour at church. It's never been. Go on,
Okay,
Jane, and then Ruth.
maybe not. Yes, I think we were surprised at the suddenness of it.
Yes, the suddenness of it, because I wasn't given any warning or anything like that. That's fair.
I think there's more than that. I think this is the most painful thing for all of us, really. Everyone in the chat too, for the whole community. We dared to hope. We really did get our hopes up that, do you know what, we're in a different world now, we're in a different Mormon landscape now, and actually it's okay that the church is, maybe not embracing it, but they're not excommunicating people like you. And so what we were able to do was, we were all hoping that this will work, so we didn't maybe fear well, I suppose we're all living with that fear, right? That's just where we are. If you're in this space, people who are worried about, do I have to worry about my email communications now? Do I have to? People are genuinely afraid. Can I say the thing out loud? So yeah, I think maybe, I think it's unfair to say that we should have been sitting preparing for this. It's always been on our radar, but we so hoped that it wouldn't happen.
Ruth?
Yeah, and I think, to speak to that, I think it's that feeling of, well, 20 years ago, there are things that are now commonplace in Mormonism that would have brought you before your bishop or maybe your stake president for sanction, but now are commonplace and accepted. There are things that are discussed now that are taught from the pulpit, or that are taught in the gospel topic essays, that would have had you excommunicated for raising and suggesting were the truth of the matter 20, 30 years ago. So you have that hope that somebody who wants to stay in but wants to ask the difficult questions is carving a new part of the path forward into the future of what the church will look like. Maybe a healthier place, maybe a place that is a little bit more grown up and can find some sort of reckoning with its history and its difficult past, and form a new future. And did it come as a surprise that this happened? Absolutely not, because I think there's some really, really abhorrent people at the top of this organisation. But were we hopeful that maybe you were able to tread that fine line and have interesting conversations with people, and actually be a safe space for people to explore some topics that maybe they hadn't put together before? I mean, one of your most used phrases is just roll the tape, and you allow the leadership of this organization to damn themselves with their own words and to reveal their own hypocrisy in their own words, but then to open up a conversation, because more often than not you would always end with a question. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. And it's always been a conversation, never and this is what you should now believe because of this. And I think, to condemn you for trying to reach out to vulnerable people and lead them away from the gospel, there's a whole lot of other people they need to get in that queue first, and most of them are at the top of this organisation.
I'd agree, and I think to that point about the sort of conversations we're having, the stake president goes back here to building a culture of authentic, open, honest communication can only be done effectively in a spirit of love. Anger and contention can only slow our progress towards that goal. Again, calling me angry and contentious, I get a little bit heated sometimes, but I don't think I'm a particularly angry or contentious person. Let me know what you think in the comments. See what I did there? See what I did there? I've raised an opinion and asked for your thoughts. Peter.
I think a lot of this is also that your whole experience has shone a big light onto leadership roulette. And as Ruth and others were saying, you know, our hope is always that some cultural shift will occur that makes some of these spaces safer, which is why we hope and we want and why you're engaged. You're not here to make people leave the church. You're here to make the church functional and stop lying to people, which you know, the trigger for both of us was how many people who are dear and near to us in our families and in our friendship group have left the church because of the problems. And we want to fix the problem. You know, they shouldn't be leaving because they got lied to. It should be because of the doctrines or something, or, you know, not that it was common or garden crime and deception. I mean, that's just embarrassing and avoidable, surely. You know, it should be about the issues, whether people stay or not basic betrayal. But what happened for both of us is we both, for a long time, had stake presidents who gave us space, who were actually quite encouraging. Mine suggested I should write a book in our early conversations. He absolutely agreed with the points. He ultimately exed me for tone policing because I did get angry, because I used angry language. And after several pages of justification, might have called Dallin Oakes a Satanist, but on the basis that he literally promotes the religion of Lucifer as taught to me in seminary. You know, it's not just an epithet, and that's the problem here. The fact that you dare to speak up and contradict a narrative or challenge people or hold them accountable, that becomes the crime, not that there's a problem with it.
There's someone I want to challenge and hold
also,
accountable, Peter. 1 second.
yeah, go on.
Bambi in the comments, Bambi in 1830 saying, all your
Yes.
traded old white men for more old white men. I am not old. Carry on, Peter.
Exactly. He's practically a baby, as you can see in the photos. But what we had, which gave us, because in many stakes we'd have been toast immediately. You'd have had one conversation in the corridor and you'd have been gone if you'd had a difficult conversation about something tricky. We both had leaders who point the way to the future, who were principals, who were I'm sure defending us. As soon as we got going or had podcasts, our stake presidents were being bombarded by people panicking and saying, why are you letting this person speak, in a sense with the authority of being a member of the church still and having that insider voice, as it were, and credibility of some kind. You know, they'd have been bombarded by people who are these weak and vulnerable people because the church kept them weak and vulnerable, kept them spectacularly in ignorance about even basic stuff. Half the people in the gospel doctrine classes I sit in haven't even got their head around evolution yet. Never mind, you know, to stuff that the church doesn't even actually worry about so much. You know, to cope then with the fact that they're being robbed and lied to, and their first presidency just got fined by a national organization because of its financial shenanigans, is beyond their comprehension. And that's the church's fault for not helping them to deal with that. But we had stake presidents who for a long time resisted that tide, who in a sense, at least for a while, kept to principle of you should be able to tell truth. I can't say this person is lying. We do have these problems. And yours, amazingly, you know, there's a real synergy for a while, supported you in approaching your area presidency and up to the first presidency. Obviously, you had to nudge that along a bit. To have the first and only process of accountability I've ever heard of, where anyone in the first presidency said, you've accused us of lying, we're going to investigate and take it seriously. Then, of course, he didn't. He sent your state president some kind of guidance letter that he put in the bin and did not let you see, which may have included a command to excommunicate you, but we'd have thought it would happen quicker if that was the case. And offered no defense for any of his colleagues. He didn't even try to defend their lies. He didn't offer a defense over most of the lies we accused him of, which are lies, they're provable. He just he pointed to third party, and as you said, he couldn't even have the integrity to say I did not lie, because he knows he did. So, and he's a lawyer, so he won't put that in writing. Other people think I didn't know I was lying. But then it crumbles, you know, the culture hits in, something shifts, and these people ultimately prove themselves to be company men, as it were. For me, my whole model in trying to stay in and hold this space and advocate for reform and go every Sunday and keep my feet on the ground with the culture, has been a hope that there would come some point where the leadership class of people, staring into the abyss of their own children leaving, their wards and stakes being merged, which is literally what's happened to both of our state presidents, as an emergency measure to save from total collapse of their state leadership, that this would give them the courage to actually, for once, challenge the leaders, say, no, this is your fault. It's not the fault of the journalists reporting this, and in fact, podcasters are doing that. They're
Well,
taking that
can I
role.
speak to that, Peter?
But they've
'Cause-
capitulated. Both of them have capitulated, and it's really sad because
yes,
they've not had the integrity and courage to hold by what they earlier indicated they know is the right thing to do here.
So I want to speak to
Yeah.
that because Thunderstick Guys made a comment here saying, "Didn't Nemo go
Yeah.
to Texas to support action against the church seeking an exemption for Aspire height?" Yes, I did. And what was going on there was the church was trying to lie to the town of Fairview, Texas, through John Cannon, who was sending out letters saying that members need to let the town planner know or the town manager know that steeple height is part of our religious worship. It just isn't. Never has been. It is not. And I couldn't bear to see them lie to this little town. So when some individuals offered to fly me out there to speak, I said, yes, I will. I'll go out there and I'll stand up for them, for the church trying to bully their way into yet another small town and build a temple far too big just because they believe they have the right to. Now, there's 2 points there, and both go to what Peter's just said. The first is my state president reassured me when I got back from Texas that he wasn't concerned about that. See, he knew I'd been there, he knew what I said, and he wasn't concerned about it. Right? So he reassured me of that. Secondly, is that I'm not the one that weakened any faith there if any faith was weakened. Me pointing out that the church was lying to people, if that weakened people's faith, that's the church's fault for lying in the first place, for getting caught out trying to lie about something in order to get a religious exemption to zoning. That's on them. That's not on me. Otherwise, anyone can lie and you can say that it's the fault of the person who points out the lie for upsetting people. It's like I tell someone that their spouse is cheating and they're like, oh yeah, well, it's your fault we're getting divorced. Well, is it? Is it really? Or is it your cheating spouse's fault? And I'm the one that told you it was happening. You know, we can have an ethical conversation about that in the comments. So G. Eric Badcock says that the ceremonies are needed to convey the blessings of the gospel. What enchantments are used to remove them? A letter sent by email are used to remove them, Eric. So yeah, there you go. There's your answer there. There's $5 from Ray Allen to limit Peter to 60-second responses. He also made a comment earlier saying that you've clearly built up too much pressure, Peter, so you need to do another 6-hour podcast on your own channel. Julian, please.
Definitely.
Can I just comment on the?
It's on its way.
Can I just comment on the bit that that you just read out about openness and transparency? I don't know what's typical in the church, but I know that my experience wasn't the same as the experience that you had in your wards, Nemo and Peter, where I think there were a lot more open, especially you, Nemo. We've had lots of conversations, and I know other people in your ward, and you know, I think they're a lot more open with their discussion. But I think that kind of that little few sentences just kind of sums up the problem. You know, everybody will say yes, we should have openness. Yes, we should have transparency, but please not here. Please don't do it in the ear. You know, in the ears, in the listening of people that might, you know, be affected by that. So where is the forum? There is no forum. There's no forum in the church for this open discussion. I know that people have created them, and you know, I'm a big fan of David Eaton and the work that he's done in Coventry State to try and promote these open forums. But I know that it's been a struggle as well, and I know that they have tried to kind of clamp down and control it so that they can, you know, make it more, you know, kind of limit the damage. And again, it comes back to these vulnerable people. Who are the vulnerable people? The people that are listening. That's the problem. You're saying these things, and there might be some people listening to you. So we don't really want that. We don't want openness. We don't want transparency, because that's what's causing the problems.
Elizabeth Scott's made a really good point, and thanks for that, Julian. which I think leads on. They say, what I don't understand is they still do not say how you led people out of the church. No, they provide no evidence. Is there any indication as to what they want me to do? No, there is no indication as to what I have done wrong and what I need to cease doing or start doing in order to come back. So all this is full of like, we'll get back to here, you know, in the next paragraph, you'll talk about until I come back or during the period in which I no longer remember. Well, they've not made it clear how exactly it is that I lost this in the first place. And what exactly it is I need to stop doing. I mean, he said I should cease communicating with people in their place of worship in a way that is harmful to their faith. So I can't be honest about the brethren hiding money to people because that harms their faith. Or what? I don't quite understand that. I'm just going to read a couple of these lines because there's some platitudes in here. The church is a means of sharing the Saviour's love and inviting people to access the power of his atonement. I have certainly felt his love for you in our interactions, particularly in recent days. Please know that Jesus Christ stands patiently waiting for each of us. I just want to say that my state president clearly didn't listen to the last general conference because Patrick Kieran said that he is actually in relentless pursuit of us. So he's not stood still waiting for us. He's actually chasing us down. So, you know, sorry, you didn't get the memo that the doctrines changed there. SP, sorry about that. But okay, he says, we recognize that this will be a difficult period for you and trust that you will find support from your family, friends, and ward community. What the ward community you've just told me I can't talk to. That same ward community you've just told me to stop communicating with. If you feel you need additional support, please reach out to your elders quorum president and bishop who can help you access professional support. Well, that's nice of them to offer professional therapy. Maybe you found out the Lad Bible had been offering it to me and thought they want to match it. I would encourage you to continue attending church meetings and activities provided your conduct is orderly. Right, okay, but you've also told me to not be speaking to them, so what's going on? However, until you are readmitted as a church member, rather presumptive, given he's given me no pathway back towards that, you may not enter the temple or wear the temple garments. You may not exercise the priesthood, partake of the sacrament, or participate in the sustaining of church officers. Sorry, Sarah. Or that'd be setting apart, sustaining a church officers. So I don't get to vote opposed anymore. You may not give a talk, lesson, or prayer in church settings or lead an activity in church. You may not serve in a church calling, and you may not pay tithes and offerings. So I'm not allowed to do any of that sort of stuff. Julian.
So, isn't the church a charity?
Yes.
So we've got a charity now that says you are forbidden from giving us your money. Yeah. Even offerings. Even offerings, right? So not tithing, but offerings. You can't. That is a funny kind of charity, isn't it? A charity that says you are not allowed to give us your money.
It's almost like it's indicative of a charity that has enough money.
Yeah, or
perhaps
one that's not really a charity
for their needs, or one that's not really a charity.
It's a charity that really genuinely thinks it's pay to play. That you know, you get those blessings predicated on how much money you drop in the bucket. Like God is some sort of eternal vending machine. So they're stopping you putting money in the slot here because they do not want you to get any blessings from it. Yeah. But you know, whatever. I just find that this is that bit of that controlling after they've pushed you out the door, where they're saying all of these things that you cannot do. You can't speak to the members. You can't wear your temple garments. You can't participate. You can't pay a charitable donation. You're a grown adult. You can do what you want to do.
Just not on their property, I guess, Jane.
It's not on their property. Yeah.
So under most.
I keep putting chats across the bottom of the screen, forgetting that you're at the bottom of the screen, so that it just covers you over.
Face. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's fine.
Oh, so you're going to switch me now?
Yeah, of course. Carry on, Jane.
Yeah, the way most charities function is that if there is any kind of conflict of interest with a donor, if they don't have the same standards, or if they got their money in ways that they're uncomfortable with, the church would not take that money. The charity would not take that money. The church would not. Yeah, the church, if you won the lottery as a member, you shouldn't have been gambling. The church wouldn't take that money. But if the tithing thing, let's face it, I think most people who are at this point would only maybe see it as it's a bit of a bonus. Oh, I can keep all my money. Okay. The bit that is incredibly upsetting, that I find really offensive, that there's just so much that's really offensive in this letter, that when they're talking in the previous paragraph about please know Jesus Christ stands patiently waiting for each of us. Yeah, they have to bear their testimony. They have to use that very Mormon language. Just speak properly, please. Just speak like a human and not a Mormon ex-missionary robot. You're throwing Jesus under the bus. You're trying to make this about Jesus. And I know Sarah will be gutted that she's not here and able to say this, but she was there, and she was calling us. She was publicly on, interviewed, stating very clearly, God is not in this process. And I heartily agree with her. You don't get to throw Jesus under the bus, so that when you actually bar someone from praying, how dare you? The level of wickedness, and it is anti-Christian, it is anti-Christ. Just hearing those words, you cannot pray in a church, in a place of worship, that is offensive. And I reject that with my whole heart.
And I give you permission, Nemo, to wear whatever pants you want.
Well,
Debbie, none at all. You go crazy.
Debbie Shrub has just given us possibly the most British comment of the night, which is, wear the sodding garments if you want. Your stake president has about as much authority as PC Plod. Which I just, yeah, that was great.
Yes. So circling back to that part where they're telling you where you've gone wrong, they're saying you're talking to vulnerable people and you're contacting them in an unsolicited manner. And when you first shared the letter with us, to me, I just thought that sounds exactly like missionary work to me. You're talking to vulnerable people and you're contacting them in an unsolicited manner. But for you, that gets you excommunicated.
And it's not unsolicited to contact your stake leaders.
Well, no, exactly. And in fact, you're going up. You're not talking to primary children, are you?
If it is a excommunicatable offence to contact your stake leaders with concerns about the state of your membership and the way that things are being managed in your stake, if that is an excommunicatable offence, then perhaps the second, third, or fourth time, I did it 8 times, perhaps second, third, or fourth time, my stake president should have actually come out and warned me. I said this to his face. I said, maybe you should have warned me instead of ignoring me for several months at a time.
And how
instead of ignoring me, maybe you should have counseled me so that we didn't end up in this place. And how did he respond? He ignored me. Not a dicky bird. Didn't say anything. And he knows he's wrong there. And he said to me before that he is embarrassed with how long it's taken him to get back to me and he's busy, etc. But, if an act of apostasy is happening right under his nose, is he really too busy to deal with that? Really? That's what makes me think that that's an excuse and it's not the real reason that I've been excommunicated. I think the real reason is in the details. Yeah. Sorry.
How many other people has he excommunicated this month?
Well, exactly. Julian?
Of course, it's a pretense. This whole thing is just it's just a pretense. You're excommunicated because you're a high profile person that is making the church look bad. That's it. It's simple and straightforward. We've got to go through it all because, again, this is another exercise. This is what you do and you do so well, Nemo. We're fact checking this letter and proving that it's all a load of nonsense. But this isn't because of you persuading anybody. Look, I can prove it. I can prove this because I'm still a member, right? I'm still a member of the church. And I'll say now on this channel, yes, anybody listening here who is still a member of the church, you should leave. Yeah, you should leave this church. Okay? Hand in your membership. Stop going. I'm not going to get X'd for that.
Right,
please,
I see what you're doing.
I could send this to my stake president. He's not going to X me for it because I'm not Nemo the Mormon. I'm not this high profile person. So it doesn't matter what they've said. That is exactly what it is for. Now, whether that direction has come from above or whether, and when I say above, I don't mean God. I mean from, higher ups in the church, or whether he's done that because, you know, Oaks put out that thing saying we should X more people, and they thought, well, maybe I should go for Nemo and it will stop sending me these really long letters. I don't know, but that is 100% what it is, and everything in this is just justification.
Yeah. Sarah M. Hughes makes a really good point here. Raise your voice, share truth, but not allowed lest you shatter faith. Normally seems concerned for your faith or their own responsibility to ethically and honestly grow the faith of others. If everyone's vulnerable, you can't speak without fear. It is a good point. You know, if I can show, which I can, that what I say and the things I share and the way I approach things has caused people to stay in the church, then all they can do is say, well, we have evidence, which they didn't show or share, but they can say, we have evidence that's caused people to leave. Well, fine. Okay. So now we've got a situation where it's almost like every conversation we have where some people might like it and some people might not. And we can't not speak out of fear for offending people constantly. We have to be able to speak truthfully. If he wants open, honest, authentic conversation, as he claims to want, then that means some people might get upset by the things you say. That means some people, at the very least, may disagree with what you say. And that has to be acceptable in open and honest, thoughtful communication. You don't set out to offend. You certainly don't say, as Julian did, I think you should leave the church, right? But you say, right, well, here's my concerns. Here's what's happening. Here's the evidence to back it up. What do you think? I say to my High Council, I am being treated in this way. I encourage you as the High Council to counsel with the state president and see if you can help him come to a resolution of these concerns. Right.
If the next general conference is anything like recent ones, the general authorities themselves are going to say a whole bunch of stuff that will lay waste to the testimony and the last shreds of faith of a huge number of people.
Thousands of people.
Because they do it every time.
Yeah.
Thousands of people will leave. There's no concern about that. You know, there's and in effect, you're offering the solution. We need better leaders, or if they're going to lie, they need to be held accountable and replaced, which they can be. You know, and a point I think you ended up making in your sort of speech at the trial is Ezekiel 3 and Ezekiel 33 both make very clear that anyone in a sort of leadership role, and I was taught to look at this, the watchman on the tower sort of statements, when as part of my oath and covenant of the Melchizedek priesthood, and this is one of the principles I kept bringing up during my trial, it says, if you do not warn the people in effect about the wolves in sheep's clothing, according to the New Testament, but if there's an enemy approaching, as the language in Ezekiel is, if you're being put as a guard, if you put someone from your lands in charge of protecting the people, and they see a danger or a threat coming, you should blow the trumpets. You should very publicly make sure you are heard by as many people as possible. If you do that and they then ignore your warning and the bad stuff happens to them, that's on them. But if God says, if you haven't warned the people, if, in other words, if you've been like a D&C scripture from seminary, if you have been warned about the gospel, it's your duty then to warn other people. You have an obligation. So if you know there's a danger or a threat to the health and safety of this church, like the leaders lying, which when people find out about, the whole church loses credibility and most of them leave a relationship with God as well because they were taught God by a corrupt organization, which is devastating if you care about religion. Then if you don't shout and warn, God will hold you responsible for whatever pain and suffering hits them. So we all, as priesthood holders or anyone in authority in the church, has a duty and obligation from right back in the Bronze Age to warn the people of a danger, of a threat, and to do it very publicly and make sure everyone hears, which is what you do as a podcaster. You know, you are literally fulfilling your priesthood duty there. Yeah. And why is your state president not doing it? Why is he not warning the people? Because he's presiding over a stake, as we all know, that just had to be merged with the neighbours, like mine was, because so many people have left.
Can I jump in,
because of
Peter?
what the general authorities are doing. Why isn't he with you?
Not only is he not warning people, I made this point. I said, I've done what I need to do. I've warned people. But he should have warned me. that I was on my way to apostasy. He should have warned me
Yeah.
that we were heading towards this, and he didn't.
Yeah.
I want to throw a comment in here really quick. Bambi 1830 is getting a lot of screen time tonight, and yet they seem to not think that I'm listening to them, which is odd. But they say, speak ill of the Exmo First Presidency, get banned. As a member of the Exmo First Presidency, you can speak ill of me all you want. That's fine. No drama there at all. Yes. Anyway, someone's offering me some money for Jammy Dodgers, and that's far more interesting. Thank you very much, the McSpew. So, okay, can we get to the final paragraph of the letter? We all ready?
Yeah.
So, here's next actions. Within 30 days of this letter, you may appeal the decision to the First Presidency. If you decide to appeal, a letter specifying alleged errors or unfairness in the procedure or decision should be sent to me, and I will promptly submit your letter for consideration by the First Presidency. I think, to be honest, I could just send them this video. It might be easier. And if you forget, I've got their email addresses, so why don't I just send it to them directly? What did you say, Julian?
I dare you.
Dave, you just send this video. Yeah, that'd be all right. Then finally, my state president says, Doug, I can honestly say, despite some of our challenging interactions, lovely euphemism there, it is a privilege and blessing to know you and be your state president. Well, you're not, because you kicked me out. So you're not my state president anymore. And I look forward to that blessing continuing. Well, if you wanted that blessing to continue, you wouldn't have kicked me out, would you? So again, it's just that feels like platitudes to try and soften the blow when he doesn't really understand what he's just done to me. So there we are. Peter, I'm going to say you've had your final thoughts because I want to go to bed tonight. No, if you've got some quick final thoughts, Peter, please feel free to share them.
Yeah, just the point, and I think other state presidents will be concerned about your particular state president's conduct. It's been repeatedly asked in the comments, if you're appealing, you have 30 days in which to appeal to the First Presidency. I managed to whittle it down to 26 pages for my appeal. So my understanding is you are appealing, Nemo. You will be taking that opportunity.
Yes, I will be. Absolutely.
Yeah,
you bet.
So just answering that question from the comments, what's, as well as it not actually being justified, and the problem is the general authorities and what they do, not the people who talk about it or just report the news. You're a journalist, in effect, with some analysis. The issue there, I just want to reiterate all the things that were done wrong about this, and for your state president, who was apparently protecting you and supportive, suddenly do such a rapid turnaround, to me looks very suspicious. He's claiming it was because it was in response to pressure from people complaining and all of that locally.
All the things it's in response to are 6 months old or older. Carry on.
Yeah.
So
it really looks like he was just commanded from above suddenly by Oakes to get you X'd before General Conference in case you vote opposed again or something. And you are obviously on President Oakes's radar for the person, in effect, revealing in public that he's a liar and doesn't want to defend himself. So to be specific, you requested the High Council, which is your right in the Doctrine and Covenants, which should be enough by itself, but also the handbook, and that was refused with no decent explanation, just he thought he read it how he wanted to. So that was wrong. So this is an invalid trial anyway by our own scriptures. You are at no point given the warning, this is how you step back from the brink. You are now at risk of church discipline in which you'll be excommunicated. But here's the warning of what you have to do to stop. My state president followed that protocol, which it should be, I'm sure it's official, but it's also obvious from natural justice. Yours is scrabbling around with some kind of nonsense that you may be in the ether were given that warning. He never sat you down and said, I'm now seriously considering church discipline. You need to shut down your website. You need to do all this, that, and the other, or you'll be X. You were never given the pathway to repent. So that's a complete failure of his ethically and as a minister and all of that. And then the charges were nonsensical and contradictory, as revealed by his letter confirming the excommunication. So this has been a ludicrous farce, with an illusion, like all these trials are an illusion of things being done right, and they ambushed you in his preamble before you were able to respond with specific charges that again weren't relevant to the actual big issue, but you had no time to prepare for and to understand what you're defending yourself against. And that is standard in all of these. So the whole system is stacked against the individual. It's not a fair process. It's never intended to be a fair process. Your excommunication was a foregone conclusion long before anyone went into that room. I do think my stake president genuinely tried to have a fair process, but he'd kind of decided
Right.
anyway.
We're not interested in your excommunication, Peter.
Yeah.
Right, let's jump on to
Yeah.
let's jump on to James.
Thanks
Sorry.
so much. Yeah, I wanted to jump in and share these final thoughts just super quick as you're wrapping up, because yeah, Sarah and I in 21st Century Saints, we are still doing the work of safeguarding and supporting people who come forward. I am going to be leaving for a meeting that I'm due to have very shortly, where we're working some more on that. At every stage in this work, Nemo has supported us. Every person that we have had that Nemo has spoken to has kept their confidentiality. Nemo has kept confidentiality about the temple, about the most sacred things that are the most moral things. And to suggest that in any way this is someone who doesn't have integrity is it's just untrue. I know there's a lot of controversy in the discussion tonight when people are sharing contrary opinions. Most people here love Nemo and love his work, and some people don't, and that's okay. And
You're welcome to.
They're welcome to do so. But I would ask that you keep this in mind, that this is our mate, that Nemo the Mormon is the show, but this is our mate right here. And our mate has people who love him and people who care about him, who read this stuff. And it is so hard watching what they have been through in this past few days. It's been awful. I can't even imagine. As Brit Vengers, we've all been exhausted and sleepless, and yeah, I guess a little bit making it about us there. I can't even imagine what our friend has gone through, and we got to have some insight into that the other night, seeing the reaction of someone who has been through this process. So I refute what has been said in the letter. I refute the allegations in the first place, and I refute them being upheld in this letter. It's my hope that an appeal will be successful. I don't have a lot of hope in that process at all, but we will continue to have faith. Up and down the country, all over the world, people will be standing up in testimony meetings this weekend. And what will happen most likely is there'll be a fair few people who will be bearing testimony about how this process is actually helpful. And when people have struggles, there is a right way to go about things. Nemo is trying something that works. He's actually doing something and has done so much to support not just us guys, but so many people in real life and online. And I just want to thank Nemo for all of the work that he's done, and just to reinforce all of the love that has been shown. I know that Nemo appreciates it, and I know that those who love him deeply appreciate it. So I'm going to head off and wish love for the rest of your journey, Nemo, and I'll catch up with all of you soon.
Cheers, Jane. Thanks. Right, Peter, sorry, I did cut you off, and I feel actually really quite bad about it. So if you want to wrap up, and then we'll move to Ruth and Julie.
No, it's all right. I made my point. It's just simply procedural, but it's two. It's one, the system, even if it had been done right, is stacked against you because technically you don't hear what you're accused of till 2 seconds before you're defending. But your stake president in particular has broken a lot of the basic rules and protocols that his fellow stake presidents do follow. And it just makes me wonder why it feels like, therefore, something came from above to insist on that. I don't, it's for him and his conscience to deal with why he did that.
Yeah.
But it's just sad. And
Well, reporting
but
media
what
who
this
are
does to
interested have reached out to him to
Yeah.
ask him. So we'll see if he responds to the media.
And again, the tragedy here and the whole point kind of what we're about is what the systems in the church do to lovely individuals. Otherwise, good people end up perjuring themselves, end up breaking their integrity, end up effectively being made to lie by senior liars. And that's why, just read, if he really means what was written in that letter to you, he's lying. He knows he's lying, and he's contradicting himself. So any contradiction, one half of that is a lie, but this is what it does to people, because it makes them do unconditional loyalty to a system and to leaders who don't deserve it and don't practice the same principles that they punish us for not practicing.
Okay.
And that's the larger tragedy going on in the LDS Church that we're all victims
Thank you.
of in different ways.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Ruth?
Oh, I love a good conspiracy theory, but I really do think the pressure has come from higher up, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's come from, mandated from Oakes, as in we're clearing house before he takes over presidency, because that timing seems very coincidental. And I pity him. I really do pity him, because on the one hand, his legacy will be thrown under the bus within a decade at the most by the next person. He's a very old man. He might have the reins for a short space of time, but then his legacy will be thrown under the bus. The church will admit to the things that he did as a person with failings, and say that wasn't the church's fault. It was him, not doctrine, and they will throw him under the bus, just as they have done with other presidents of the church in past times. So his reign of terror, which seems to be anti LGBTQ and just anti anyone who questions him, I think will come to an end and be swept under the rug, and they'll move on from it. And that will be his legacy, that he'll be an embarrassment to the church. And I pity him for that. And I also pity him because, and I do not believe anymore, but should there be a heaven, should there be pearly gates that we're stood in front of, I really feel that his legacy will not be one that he will look back on proudly. And I will be happy to stand there and to be answerable for the things that I have done or not done, and the things that I have said not in my name, because I will not follow somebody who acts in the way that he acts and leads in the way that he leads. So yeah, I pity him. He's a very old man, and I think it has come from him. And you may not be the only person that will be suffering under this new regime of excommunication to try and silence truth speakers. But there we go. That will be his legacy.
Yeah, if they'd excommunicated me this month, just 24 hours later, we could see we'd start the October 8 and see what we get. Julian, your final thoughts, please.
We spent a lot of time this evening kind of justifying your actions and kind of arguing the accusations that have been leveled against you, and it's wound me up a little bit, because it's not the point. It's just and this is intentional on their part. It's just a diversion. I know, because we spoke about it beforehand, and you've talked about it now. You put forward this watertight argument for why what they're accusing you of, cannot be founded. But I almost wish that you hadn't. I understand why you did, and it's great that you did. But I almost wish that you hadn't. I wish that your defense would have just been, tell me where I've lied. Tell me where I've lied. Because they can't. They can't, and that's the issue. That's the only issue. Okay, you've spoken truth, and that's made. And what's amazing in some ways about this is that it really just exposes all of what we've been saying for so long, and that is that the church is a machine for making people feel good, and you kind of put a bit of a spanner in those works, and that's what they don't like, and they showed in that excommunication that they have prioritized loyalty over integrity. They've prioritized loyalty, and not loyalty to Jesus, not loyalty to the gospel, loyalty to the leadership of the church. That's what really counts. And they've made that very, very clear. That's what really counts, loyalty towards the membership of the church. So if anything, it's the church that's in apostasy.
Thanks, Julian. Right, I'm going to make my face nice and big. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you very much for everyone for bearing with my slightly dull start and my inability to quite formulate my thoughts even now. I'm not as articulate as I'd like to be at the moment, but we will get through it and we'll be okay eventually. So thank you to the 2,500 people that have been watching throughout this live stream. That is the largest live stream audience I think I've ever had, certainly that I've been dealing with. I think there was more on the stream that John did onto this channel. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Hit the like button on the way out. If you want to support this channel, you can make a monthly recurring donation at the donor box link in the description, or for the princely sum of $1.99, a sixth of a cup of coffee a month, you can just support me here on YouTube, and that creates a nice steady base of income so that I can continue to do this full time and not worry about the ups and downs of everything going on. I can't get excommunicated every other month to get, loads of people coming in and joining the channel, So thank you, everyone who has, in all seriousness, rallied round. It's been great to see the influx of people coming to support me and show me that support. And I will be appealing, and I will let you know the appeal. But in the meantime, the outcome of the appeal. But in the meantime, come back on Friday for the predictions show, and we'll see if my excommunication has ruined my ability to predict General Conference very well or not. And then come back on the weekend for my General Conference halftime shows. I'll still be doing them. I'll still be watching conference, so you don't have to, and giving you all the best insights that I can straight after the sessions. So thank you very much, everyone, for everything. You guys are great, and it's been a pleasure to chat this evening. So take care, and I need a catchphrase, don't I? What? Give me your best catchphrase in the comments. Let me know what my sounding off catchphrase should be. John's got the "be good to each other, be kind to each." I'm not going to do my John Lynn impression. He's got his "be good to each other, be kind to each other" thing. So yeah, whatever you think I should say at the end, please let me know. Okay, bye everyone. I'm going to stop rambling now. I'm going to go to bed. Enjoy.